everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Margot Halleck, and today I'll be doing another paint along with me. For this project, I'll be using Arches hot press paper, which is my favorite watercolor paper, along with Winsor & Newton watercolors and some Holbein gouache as well. For a full list of my supplies, check out this video in the card above. I always start with laying down lighter colors at the beginning and then building up over time. So that's what you'll see in this first pass of color. As you can see, I like using a lot of water, especially for my background washes. So right now I'm painting the leaves on my tree, and I'm going to keep going over these areas to build up the layers and the dimension within the tree. And I mixed the green and the brown together to give it a more complex color scheme so that it doesn't look too flat. So I really like combining vivid colors with more neutral or deader colors like brown so that it doesn't look too flat or artificial. And you can see that in this example right here where the combination of green and brown just looks really, really rich together. So I'm going to be doing Alice in Wonderland's teacups in cerulean blue and a couple of different other colors as well. And I love this part. This is one of my favorite parts of the entire story is the Mad Hatter Tea Party. And the way that I drew these teacups looks really off-kiltered and kind of like it's going to fall over, which adds to the tension of the piece. And now I'm going to be painting the roses red. And if you've watched the animated Disney movie, you'll remember that particular song where they're singing about painting the roses red and the Queen of Hearts comes out and terrorizes everybody. So back to these roses, I'm doing a watercolor wash first and then adding more pigment around the middle to give them that just bloomed kind of effect. And then I'll come back to them later to add the details for the petals. And it's okay for them to be inconsistent. Some of them will be darker, some of them will be a little bit paler, and that's what gives it a more lifelike feel. So I'm moving on to the little insects on the table, and granted this is not a part of the real Alice in Wonderland plotline, but I thought it would be really fun and kind of cute to have little ladybugs and bumblebees all participating in this tea party. So I've added them throughout the scene. Some of them are on the actual table, some of them are flying in the sky, and yeah, it adds to that feeling of there being a bustling tea party in the garden. And here's a prime example of why I decided to incorporate gouache into this piece. So for example, on the insect wings, I used red gouache instead of watercolor. I also did that on the roses for the petals so that it really pops in a way that's very, very graphic and really bold. So as you can see right now, I'm adding some petal details on the roses in this really deep red color, and that makes the rose really come to life and look like a rose. Next up, I'm going to start filling in the details for Alice and her features. So for her hair, I'm doing a combination of burnt umber and indigo, and just like everything else, I'm going to be doing this in layers. While I wait for this layer to dry, I'm going to go over to the leaves and start blocking that off. And you'll see that these are actually looking really opaque as well because I'm using gouache for these to make them really pop and look very graphic. I couldn't resist adding a deck of red cards to the white rabbit as a subtle nod back to the Queen of Hearts. As you can see, I'm using the same red gouache throughout the painting, so that's something I always do, which is sprinkle the same colors throughout the entire piece to make it more consistent and more harmonious. And right here, this is an element of my own personal style that I like to add pencil markings throughout my painting. This is something that's not necessarily a very orthodox thing to do. I just like doing it because to me, it adds more energy and more movement to the piece. And that's typically how I'll work. I'll alternate between using paints and pencil, depending on what areas of the painting I'm working on and what areas are drying. So that's something that's kind of my own personal way of working. Now we're coming back to the insects on the table, and I'm adding some dark stripes for the bumblebee that's holding an umbrella. So we're staying really whimsical with the overall theme here. I want this entire garden to feel like it completely came alive and all the flowers and trees and the bugs and everything are all participating in this fun tea party. And again, here with the flowers, I decided to paint them with gouache as opposed to with watercolors so that I could get the colors to pop and be a little bit more opaque and graphic. I try not to overwork areas like this and just allow the paint to kind of move the way it wants to, which ends up looking a lot more natural. So right here I'm using a specialized brush from the Princeton Select line, which is called a liner. And this type of brush is really, really practical for painting straight lines, and it gives you a lot of control so you don't have to worry about having a shaky hand. Now that I'm waiting for some of the areas in the bottom half of the painting to dry, I'm going to come back to the Cheshire Cat and add in the details on his face, the eyes, the nose, etc. with a 12/0 detail brush. I'm using the same 12/0 brush to start adding some details onto the wings of my bumblebee. And as you've probably already noticed, these bees are not biologically correct, which gives me the opportunity to stylize patterns on their wings and even the shapes on their bodies. This detail brush is also perfect for adding wispy brush strokes, which gives the bunny the illusion of being furry. I'm using a gorgeous primary red to bring to life the Ace of Hearts, which is also floating around in the garden. And this part is a little bit unusual, where I'm bringing a little bit of the red from the card into its shadow. We have another bumblebee here, which I'm going to finish up by adding the black stripes as well as the wing details, and also add in some shadows and some shading behind him to further pull him away from the background. And essentially I'm going to use the same color as I used for his black stripes, but I'm going to dilute it a little bit and even blend out so that it's not so severe. We're going to add in the little antennas, and I'm exaggerating that again to make it look even cuter, and even adding some little balls on the end, so it really looks like a stuffed animal or cartoon bee. I'm going to use the same mixed black color that I used for the bee on this flower, which is going to be loosely based on an anemone. So I'm adding some little wispy details around the central part, and that really just makes that central part stand out a lot. I decided to give the bees a dashed line behind them, which makes them a little bit more dynamic and gives them more movement. Now that we're nearly done, I'm going to come in and add the details on Alice's face, and very much like the strawberries, I'm exaggerating the features, especially the eyelashes, which I like to make very long and wispy. And again, right here I'm using a 12/0 brush for the details because it gives me pinpoint precision. This is always the most stressful part of the painting because the face is always the focal point, and you really want to make sure that you don't mess up, especially at the very end of a piece like this. I'm going to give her a little dab of red, which is the same red that I was using for the roses in the background and for the Ace of Hearts. And that's really going to make her face come alive. I usually use a watered down version of the same color for the cheekbones to give her a healthy glow. I'm going to take care of a couple more details here and there, like the wings of this butterfly, and then I'm going to once more just go over these areas with the pencil to give it that sketchy quality that I like a lot. And then we're done. So hopefully you had as much fun as I did. And if this video inspired you to create your own Alice in Wonderland painting, don't forget to tag me because I'd love to see what you came up with. If you enjoyed watching this video and if you want to watch others like it, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Keep creating, keep painting, and I'll see you next time.